In many ways, what we've done is we've taken what you would typically find in a sales and marketing CRM, like marketing automation and nurturing campaigns and following up on leads, just the concept of a lead. We've taken that and we've layered that entire layer of business operations and business intelligence on top of practice management. And it's out of the box. You don't have to plug in 5 different systems. You're launched and off to the races you go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. First off, as you know, I like to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, for their support, allowing me to come to your inbox every Friday morning at 5 a.m. with a new episode release. I also want to tell everybody about my event, remind everybody that September 27th and 28th in Scottsdale, Arizona, the second annual Supercharge Your Dental Practice will take place. If you have interest, go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com. Check out the amazing lineup of speakers and sponsors we have and use the code RAVING, R-A-V-I-N-G, to save $100 on registration. My guest is Dr. Lior Tamir from the Dental App. Lior graduated from dental school in 2009. At the peak of the recession, he had no luck in finding work in dentistry. He left temporarily and worked in software. He started to build the Dental App, which turned into a full-blown practice-growing solution. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Dr. Lior Tamir. Lior, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Len.
Dental App is a sponsor at Supercharge Your Dental Practice as well, but I wanted to have him on here before that even happened. Give everybody a little overview of kind of how you got into the industry, a little bit about your practice, and we'll take the content from there.
So I went to dental school. I went to UOP. I got out in 2009, and I have no family in dentistry. So, a lot of my classmates, they had families. They kind of had a place to land. In my case, I came out and I really was struggling to find a job that would keep me busy and pay the bills. I ended up finding a real part-time job in the town that I grew up in San Mateo area. And it just wasn't enough to keep me busy. It was like 2 days a week. I was doing primarily hygiene. So it was just a very weird time. And I just started dabbling in other things. I kind of grew up in the Silicon Valley area. So software ended up being where I landed. And I started working for one company and kind of started doing one thing on my own. Eventually, I started working on kind of like a marketing agency. And this is kind of the early days of being able to do advertising online and social media and things of the sort. And one thing led to another. I pretty much left dentistry for about 7 years and really focused on software and marketing. And I built a company that would take an advertiser's ad spend and optimize it across paid channels. That's kind of where I started off with software. During that period of time, I was really fortunate. I got to work with some amazing brands and learned so much about not just branding, but advertising, running a business. The company that I had, we had an office in New York City and San Francisco. So, just managing sales, customer service, managing inbound leads, and et cetera, just kind of creating business processes. At the end of 2015, the margins in that business became so tough. We ended up closing it down, said, you know what, maybe it's time for me to get back into dentistry. And I found a dilapidated facility. This facility used to be a pediatric office. The pedo dentist had defaulted on their loans and closed down shop. So it was, the facility was sitting around for a few years. And I ended up saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to give it a chance. I bought out the build out from the landlord, and I started a de novo office, which was Bloom Dental Group. And immediately, as I started to kind of design and think through and say, hey, you know what, how am I going to take all the things that I learned running a business and try to introduce that into dentistry and try to create something different? It really started to get me thinking about what was available and how I was going to go about building this new office. To my surprise, at the time I was running like Open Dental, Next Health. I was using Dental Intel. I was using all these different solutions, and I still had a really difficult time creating, a unique experience. For those of you that may not know, like San Mateo areas, we're smack in Silicon Valley. There's hundreds of dentists. It's really difficult to stand out. And so, it became one of those things that I was constantly trying to wrap my head around. How am I going to stand out? How am I going to be unique? And how am I going to build a practice that people are going to pick over others? And then once that happened, it was really figuring out, well, how do I scale this business? How do I implement business operations that are repeatable and manageable and measurable? And that's really where kind of the concept for the dental lab came about.
No, that's great. Look, I have a background in software as well, so I understand the complexities involved there. I wanted to help solve a problem in the industry, and that's kind of what I did. Now it's pretty amazing that, when I started it, I'll be 10 years at Bird Eye in September. And, it's amazing the lift we had, after I joined Bird Eye. But looking back, it's amazing what things have turned into. Can you just briefly, before we go into more information about Dental App, can you just reiterate the story that you told me regarding when you were in China? Because I think that was a really cool story for people to understand, because you have built a really successful practice, and you took it from, as you mentioned here, a dilapidated office that was a pedo place, and you made it into an office with 4 hygienists, oral surgeon, I think 4 or 5 doctors, doing, multiple millions of dollars a year. So can you just really just give that or state what that little story you had about going to China and deciding on the toothbrushes and stuff? Because I really think that was a really unique thing that you did that really accelerated your growth. And it's amazing how something that small really helped you change your practice growth.
I think it's important to understand that the concept behind it, or the idea behind it, was like, how do I create a wow experience, right? So when patients come in, I started doing things like making sure we're extremely thorough. From day one, we wanted to be extremely thorough, have technology, super friendly. The office smells nice, lots of natural light. So really dialing in that first patient experience. But then I constantly felt like, okay, well, how do I get people to be like, wow, this is amazing, and then tell everyone they know? So I ended up looking into conferences where I can maybe source different products. I found this conference in Shanghai called Dentech, and I took a total leap of faith. I booked a flight to Shanghai, and I remember I flew out there with my one employee at the time. She was my office manager and my assistant. That's how I started. It was just me and her, and flew out there, and I found a electric toothbrush manufacturer. And the idea was like, okay, well, the electric toothbrush was kind of amazing to begin with. It was super well made. It really looked like a Sonicare. It came with a bunch of brush heads. I could buy additional brush heads, and I ended up working out a deal where I customized the packaging and made some customizations to the brush. And I purchased, it was over like a 3-year period of time. I purchased like 5,000 brushes, but my first order was 2,500 brushes. I shipped that to the States. And, when you ship things like that, you're shipping it in pallets through a port. So I remember having to drive down to the Long Beach port and like wait in line and load up a U-Haul and then drive it back to where I live. Unloading it, and kind of what I decided to do was I gave every single new patient, or every patient in my office, a free electric brush. And it wasn't like some rinky dink brush. It was like a really nice, fancy electric brush with our custom packaging. And, the storyline that went with it was we were telling patients, hey, like, look, we want to invest in your dental health. And here's a gift from us. And the shock that you would see, it never got old. People would be like, "Oh my God, are you serious? Like, this is free? Yeah, there's no strings attached. Yep, no strings attached. Here you go. Here's your free brush." And then when they come in for recalls, we'd give them brush heads. But that became one of the probably most important things that we did that really put fuel on the fire. We quickly went from like 5 new patients, 10 new patients, to 30 new patients, 50 new patients. And now we average well over 100 new patients a month. We probably spend less than $3,000 in advertising a month. So, with very little advertising, obviously now we're established, we have a reputation. But that one specific thing really drove just incredible growth in my practice.
And then one other thing I wanted to mention to people, I think that was an amazing story. So, a wow factory, creating a wow experience, using a toothbrush to get people to want to come in. I think that's phenomenal that you were able to accomplish that. The one other thing I wanted you to mention, if you're okay with it, is just talk about, I'm a review guy. We mentioned, you had talked about Bird Eye, and Bird Eye helps with Google, but you found your success on Yelp. So can you just briefly go over how successful Yelp has been for your practice? Because again, I think that's a rare thing that you see. And I wanted you to kind of promote that as well, or just talk about that before we get into more about the dental app.
Sure. I think where I live and practice is really unique to this. I'm smack in Silicon Valley. Most of the patients I deal with are techies. I'd say 90% of my patients are working at a tech company. So they really like Yelp. Yelp became something that was very clear that I had to master and really dial in to see success. So there's a lot of things that we do in our office to really ensure that patients have a fantastic experience. So, we don't solicit reviews. It's one of those things that, the people come in and say, oh, you got so many great reviews. Well, it's a lot of hard work, and really it's an orchestra of details that flow into creating these really awesome experiences for patients. There's a lot of technology that we've implemented. There's actual technology for practicing dentistry. But over the years, I've gotten to the point that I have a really strong following on Yelp, or a reputation on Yelp. And I would say, I was telling you earlier, probably 100% of my patients check my Yelp. So we get, I always ask patients when they come in, like, how'd you hear about us? Or we collect that on their forms. I would say over 90% say Yelp. And so Yelp has been a really strong proponent of our success. It's one of those things. It's like we have a love-hate relationship with Yelp, but we made it work.
Yeah, I think to this, you have 300 plus reviews and you have 120 something filtered reviews. But the big thing is you don't pay them a dime. You don't do advertising with them, and you still have that much success. So for those out there, I just wanted people to understand that Yelp can be successful. I give a class called Help on Yelp because I know how successful it could be. But in his case, it's very, very extraordinary what he gets from it. So
there's this book I read. It's about hospitality. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality, and it's one of my favorite books. I think that anyone in the dental industry who has not read it really needs to read it. The one thing that's unique about this book, and Len, you probably agree with me, is that what people sometimes forget is that we're clinicians, we do dental work, but at the end of the day, we're really in the hospitality business. And if you change that mindset and understand that you gotta create a really awesome experience that patients feel comfortable in, right? There's so much psychology that happens behind just being a dentist or operating a dental office, what they smell when they first come in. And, like if you ever walk into your favorite hotels, there's scents that really, invigorate, and just you walk in, it smells good, it looks good. There's a lot of bright light. People are super friendly. I mean, you could be as rude as you want. They're still going to be friendly to you. Those are things that are so critical in our success. When I read Unreasonable Hospitality, these are things that came naturally to me. It was the first time I read it in paper. I said, wow, like this person just really dialed it in. They took exactly what I knew had to happen and they put it into words. I can't stress enough how important this book was to creating that unique experience. Anyways, I thought that was a well worth mention.
And that is an amazing book. I highly recommend anybody who's listening to this podcast go check out that book, because that has played a huge role in kind of how I decided to do things. And I highly recommend people read that. So thank you for pointing that out. I had it, like, literally, you mentioned it sitting right there.
That's so funny. I was like, where are you going?
Yeah. That was great. So thank you for a lot of that backstory. Let's talk now about the dental app. I'm curious, what makes the product unique? There are other cloud-based platforms out there. So what makes the dental app unique compared to those other solutions?
Maybe I can start off telling you where I started in the dental app. Because today the dental app is a full-blown practice management software, but it didn't start off that way. Again, going back to my story, it was very important for me that when patients came in, I was able to be extremely thorough in terms of explaining what treatment they needed, why they needed it, and guide them through understanding it. So before I even started the dental app, I had worked in a few different offices when I decided to get back into dentistry, just kind of get back into the groove of things. One place that I worked, they had a worksheet that every new patient, I would fill it out, documenting missing teeth. I mean, the things that you do anyway, but it had a very specific workflow. So that workflow became a conversation piece. So a patient would come in, I'd fill all this detail out, do cancer screenings, look at the TMJ, look at the ortho screening. And then I'd take the time to really explain all these things to the patients. And I noticed that at that particular office that I was working at, I was closing everything. I mean, any patient that came in, I walked them through this exam. They ended up doing all their treatment and my schedule was slammed. So when I started my practice, I wanted to do the exact same thing. So I had a paper worksheet to begin with, but the paper worksheet became kind of a pain, and then it essentially becomes a routing slip. Then you have to input into the software. I started dabbling with building out this workflow, which today in the dental lab we call it our guided patient exam, but it's exactly that. What it does is it creates a standardized process for a new patient that comes in, and it walks you through. You document hard tissue, soft tissue, perioprobings, periodiagnosis. And look, there's other systems that have really nitty gritty ways to, document, the filling is 2/3 of the isthmus and things like that. It's not that. On the contrary, it just gives you a high level, document TMJ, any TMJ issues. Is there clicking, popping, crepitus? Do they have ringing in the ears? Ortho screening, documenting, what's going on with their bite and how is that contributing to the wear that we see. So that's really where the dental lab started. It started off as a guided patient exam. And honestly, till today, it's probably one of the most unique things about our system. But it quickly became clear that, again, I was taking that, I was then exporting a report and then having my front office input all the treatment into a practice management software. And that's really where things started to develop into more than just that. In summary, if someone says to me, hey, like, what's unique about the dental lab and how does it differ from everything else out there on the market? The short answer is that this piece of software was designed, developed, tested, and perfected in an extremely busy dental office. So it came out of need. It came down to, as the practice scaled, and kind of like you said, we're 4 GPs, 1 oral surgeon, 4 hygienists now. So it's a super, super busy office. It became really clear that I had to have systems in place. And that's really where it comes from. So the dental app is essentially practice management software, but we've taken the business processes that were really critical for me to grow out my dental practice, and we've implemented them in automated workflows. And today, that you have all of those things out of the box. So you're not really taking the practice management software, adding third-party tools, everything gets consolidated, but the sum is, the outcome is much more than the sum. It's not just, all the parts together, so it's convenience. There's automated workflows for managing insurances, insurance claims, verification. We've now rolled out an integration with Mango, so there's phone systems integrated. But some of the things that are extremely different is, for example, we have a concept called a pipeline. So, in my office, and I'm sure this is very similar to many other offices, we have patients that come in and then, you recommend some treatment, and for whatever reason, that treatment doesn't get scheduled. It could be that the patient is traveling. It could be that they can't afford it. It could be that they're waiting for insurance to renew. It could be that they want to renew their HSA, FSA, whatever it might be. Sometimes there's things that don't get scheduled. There's also times where we schedule patients and then the patient has to cancel for whatever reason. And keeping track of those patients that have outstanding treatment is usually an extremely manual process. So, for example, historically, what I would do is I would use my analytics software to look at the outstanding opportunity, right? So they would give me some sort of list of all the patients that have treatment that didn't schedule it. Then I'd copy that list, put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And then I would copy the name, go into my text messaging software, plug it in, go back into the practice management software, look them up, and then start texting them. Hey, you have this filling that we noticed like 3 months ago. You had decay there. Do you want to come back in and get that scheduled? And this is, believe it or not, I tell dentists this all the time. Like, we run dental offices. Patients know that it's not a spa, right? They're not coming in to get a massage, right? People have a lot of anxiety about coming to the dentist, and that goes back to the psychology. Like, how do you create these really unique experiences? But at the end of the day, sometimes it requires you to follow up with a patient, multiple times before they come back in and schedule. And this happens to be a huge missed opportunity in many dental offices. And part of that is because as dentists, we're not really taught to have business processes around these things. And then if you want to implement a business process like this in your dental practice, you're really doing it manually. Kind of like I said, you're putting it into an Excel, you're adding, or a Google Doc, whatever it is, you're adding detailed notes. But at scale, it doesn't work, right? Like in my office, we got to the point that we had over 3,000 people on this list that, someone in my office was required to follow up with. It just becomes a really difficult process. So again, going back to the dental app, what makes it unique? We got this concept called a pipeline. You can essentially search and segment and create sub audiences out of your patient base. So you could say, show me anyone who we recommended a crown. Here are the 5 codes that I want you to search for within the last 1 year. And it creates a pipeline out of them. And that pipeline can get assigned to your office manager or different staff members. And then through the system, you're able to immediately see their outstanding treatment, message them, keep track. You don't want to harass them or bother them also. So it's really important to see, I messaged this person last week. Let's snooze them for a month because I didn't hear back. And it just allows you to, out of the box, create these really seamless business processes that allow you to drive growth in your practice, right? So in many ways, what we've done is we've taken, what you would typically find in a sales and marketing CRM like HubSpot, right? And anyone who's operated a business outside of dentistry, they would be really familiar with that. There's marketing automation and nurturing campaigns and following up on leads and just the concept of a lead. We've taken that and we've layered that entire layer of business operations and business intelligence on top of practice management. And it's out of the box. You don't have to plug in 5 different systems. You're launched and off to the races you go. The last thing is, what we've seen with the practices that have onboarded on our system is that they're actually seeing growth, right? We're not just giving them a cloud solution that's, easier to use, which yes, we do that also. But they're actually driving growth. They're seeing, tens of thousands of dollars being added to production every single month, doing, implementing these business processes and doing these nurture campaigns. And that's what's really exciting.
Got it. No, that sounds amazing. One of the big things in being a dental practice owner myself, one of the most difficult things probably to do is change software in the office. It's a very challenging thing. It causes interruption in the business operations. It makes the team go nuts having to learn something else. Look, I was a Dentrix user for 20 plus years. And when I sold my practice, the new owner wanted to implement Open Dental, and they did a test on Open Dental on just one of the computers. And within a couple of days, everybody said, we're not switching. We don't get this. This doesn't make any sense to us. And since has never switched. So one of the most difficult things to do in practice is changing practice management softwares. So can you talk about some of the challenges behind that?
It's probably one of the biggest pain points, and we hear about it all the time. So in what we've done is we've built data synchronizers for the top practice management solutions. So Open Dental, Dentrix, we're working on Dentrix Ascend and EagleSoft. And essentially what we're able to do is we're able to take all of your historical data and onboard that in under 3 days. So it's an automated data synchronizer. Then we go through a data validation call with our offices. We're able to tweak things and kind of make sure everything was transferred over. We're transferring over ledgers. We're transferring over, if they use Dental Exchange, we're transferring over their insurance claims that are outstanding. And we try our best to make it as seamless as possible. The practices that have used our system will tell you that we're extremely hands-on and very much almost like a boutique in that sense that, we really want that part to be easy. The other part that makes us really unique is our entire support team is dental office veterans, right? So we have on the dental app, we have someone who her name is Patty. She's been an insurance biller for 25 years. So she's so familiar with that. So for example, when you do the training calls with our team, you're doing it with people that really understand dentistry. It's not like, hey, this is how you click a button to do this. It's, look, I've been doing insurance claims for 25 years. Let me show you what are the best practices to implement in your practice. And so that's another extremely unique thing that we do to really help make that transition as easy as humanly possible. And we've had, office managers that have been using Dentrix for, 25 years switch over to the dental app and, they get excited like, oh my God, it's actually that easy. Yeah, it's that easy. You don't need, what's a day, how do I print a day sheet? Oh, you just press this button, that says reporting, and then pick your date and off you go. So in terms of just constantly optimizing the experience that we want patients to have in the office, we've translated that into software, and we've tried to make that software as seamless and easy as possible as well.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. Another question I get a lot is, what are the advantages or disadvantages of going to a cloud versus a server? So for those that are still contemplating any cloud-based platform, can you talk a little bit to that? What some of the advantages and disadvantages of server versus cloud?
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that these days, a lot of the offices that we talk to, the scenario tends to be that their server is kind of end of life, right? Like their server's 10, 15 years old, they're running out of space, it's slow, it's glitchy. And so they're kind of faced with this big decision, like, okay, well, what do I do now, right? And so they're getting quotes, and a new server today is like $5,000-6,000. Then you have to implement all this additional IT and logins and remote access and so on. And I always ask these people that are considering and are not sure, do I go cloud or not? At the end of the day, today, what don't we do on the cloud? I mean, we bank online, we send wires online, we buy stocks online, you can buy Bitcoin online, you can travel all over the world buying flights online. We do everything online. Hospitals run online. How come we run our multi-million-dollar operations on, rinky-dink software from the 90s and constantly plug things in? A lot of it is just familiarity. It's something that we're comfortable with. But I think that a lot of offices are kind of have a shock factor of how expensive it is these days if you're kind of refreshing your server. There's the whole concept of like cloud or on-premise. That's a big consideration, price point. Second thing is accessibility. I was recently on a flight. My wife's family lives in Mexico City. I was on a flight to Mexico City. I logged into the Wi-Fi on the airplane, and I'm able to see my x-rays and my claims and just check what's going on in my office. You're able to kind of access and do everything, obviously in a secure way, but on the go. And that's just such a game changer, right? I used to, before I had all this live, I used to be on vacation and I'd call my office up and be like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you export a report for me so I could see how my day went and just make sure I can consolidate the bank accounts and so on. So I think there's so many benefits to going cloud. It's hard to believe that we aren't, the majority of us aren't already on the cloud. I know it's really scary, but I think there's a lot of really great contenders coming out with super innovative products right now. And that's kind of the future and direction where the industry has to go. I mean, it's just crazy that we're still on premise. And I think security is a big factor there. So that's something that we've taken extremely seriously. So, we have a mandatory two-factor authentication and encryption. We did a HIPAA compliance audit. We're looking into SOC 2 compliance, right? These are things that we really take extremely seriously. We actually roll out virtual servers, an individual virtual server for every office, or our server ops in terms of how the software operates. Really make sure that there's no, we call it a noisy neighbor effect, where if multiple practices are on one server and there's a problem with one, kind of affects the others. So we really take security and optimization, just performance, really seriously. To make it an absolute no-brainer.
Well, this was great content here. I want to use some of the time we have available now to just do our lightning round Q&A, and then we'll get your information and find out how people can reach out if they want to learn more about the dental app. So for those that haven't listened to my podcast before, we always have a couple newbies. I do a lightning round Q&A using an app on my phone. It's called Poddex, and Lior, they're business-related questions, so they should be very easy for you to answer. So the first question, do you have a hard time telling people no?
No.
What deserves all your attention but seldom gets it?
I'm pretty good about that. I don't think there's anything in my life that doesn't deserve my attention that doesn't.
All right. Has anyone in your network been important to your journey?
Oh, I have so many mentors. I'll say two people. One guy was my board member. His name is Paul Weiss. I learned so much from this person. He is a big time business veteran, like running huge businesses. I learned so much from him on business ops, managing businesses, managing people, and actually dealing with crises. So I had a few situations where I had investors turn on me, things like that. And Paul was always the first person I would call. I learned so much from him. The second person who I've learned so much from in the dental industry is Bob D. So Bob is the dentistry in general. Just learning from him in terms of before we were allowed to work with dentistry in general. I mean, the guy grilled me for months. Just audited the crap out of my business, my software, what we were doing. He wouldn't even take my phone calls in the beginning. And then when he finally saw that we were serious and we're doing something really unique, he really started, offering me advice. I learned a lot from him in terms of the dental industry.
Yeah, I know Bob's a good guy. I know Bob well. So,
yeah.
What was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
A musician.
Okay. Do you make a to-do list every day, weekly, or when do you do it?
I have an ongoing to-do list, and it never ends. It lives in my email. So I send myself an email with my to-do list that I can quickly access, and I update that on a weekly basis.
This is a tough question, this one. If you were to write a book about yourself, what would you call it? What would you name it?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Tough question.
The underdog. I think I've always been a little bit of an underdog.
Okay. What do you think is a unique skill that has helped you become successful?
I think probably the one thing that has impacted my success the most is communication. I just have a sense of understanding who I'm talking to, and really being able to communicate effectively is a mission critical item in all aspects, in patient care and business, etc.
This one I may know the answer because you mentioned it. What business related book has inspired you the most, or what is your favorite book?
So, we talked about unreasonable hospitality. I'll give you one more. Never Split the Difference is one that always comes to mind. It's a book about a FBI hostage negotiator, about negotiations. But that's been something that I just learned a lot from. Got it.
Do you have a favorite business podcast?
Well, I love your podcast. And I also listen to All In. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but that's my morning. Every morning I drive to work, I listen to the most recent All In podcast.
2 last questions. What is your definition of success?
Definition of success is waking up every morning and doing what you love. I'll probably work till the very last day in my life. Probably not as a dentist, but working for sure. I think stimulating your mind is absolutely critical. And for me, being able to do that and just have my time to do that, that's what success is.
Got it. And last question, which I ask everybody, what is one subscription you can't live without? It could be business or personal.
ESPN. I love watching the UFC. So I can't live without that.
That's an interesting one. I haven't heard that one before, but that's a good one. All right, Lior, how can people find out more about the dental app? How can they contact you? And I know you said there was a promotion you wanted to offer the viewing and listening audience.
Best way to find me is Instagram or my email. I'm sure it'll be listed. The dental app, you can go to thedentalapp.com. We really wanted to give you create a name that was super easy. You don't really have to think too much about it. It's easy to spell, easy to remember. Generally speaking, our offer is we have something really exciting. One thing that we wanted to do is make the dental app extremely affordable. It is a flat fee, $3.99 a month. And that includes 500 insurance claims, all your text messaging, all your emails. There's no fees for additional users. It's unlimited users, unlimited computers, and it's locked in for 10 years. So that is our really exciting promotional fee or price or offer.
That's great. So, Lior, thank you so much for joining me today. You were an amazing guest. We went through a lot of content. The time went by very quickly, but we covered a lot of things during the podcast. So you did really well. Guys, if you like the podcast, please share it. Please recommend it. Please tell your friend about it. If you have interest in learning more about the dental app, please go ahead and go to the dental app's website or contact Lior. And his email address will be in the show notes. And I wanted to remind everybody about my event called Supercharge Your Dental Practice. Lior will be there. He's going to talk about his product for about 10 minutes on stage as well. September 27th and 28th, Scottsdale, Arizona, the Scott Resort and Spa. Go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING, RAVING, to save $100 on your registration. And as I end every single one of my podcasts, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Lior, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to everyone soon.